Hey there storytellers, welcome back to my channel. Today's video, as you can see from the title down below, is the Intimidating TBR tag. Basically, it is a tag where you answer questions based on books that are on your TBR pile, and you answer why you haven't gotten to them yet. So without any further ado, let's get right on into it. Question 1 is talk about a book you have been unable to finish, and for this one, I'm going to talk about A Danger to Herself and Others by Alyssa Scheinmel. This is a YA thriller, and it follows a young girl whose name I can't even remember, Hannah, because that's how long it's been since I picked this book up. I haven't finished reading it, not because it's not interesting, but because it's one of those books that really sucks me in while I'm reading it, but the second I set it down, it kind of just flees my mind and I forget I even have it. It doesn't help that I've been keeping it on the shelf and not on my bedside table where I keep most of the books that I'm in the middle of reading. The main point of interest for me was the fact that this is clearly a very unreliable narrator, and I was very interested to keep reading to find out what the truth of the story is, because Hannah is in a mental health ward when we meet her, and I kind of wanted to find out why she was there and what this big to-do was that got her there in the first place, but yeah, I just keep forgetting about it, which is why I haven't finished it yet. So the next round of questions all follow the same initial prompt, which is, what is a book you have yet to read because ... So first is, what is a book you have yet to read because you haven't had the time? And for that, I'm going to say Renegades by Marissa Meyer, and by this, I mean the Renegades series, and by extension, all series. I just haven't been in the mood to pick up a new series. The only reason I finished the Shadow Games series this year is because technically I had already started it last year and I wanted to wrap it up, but I haven't had the time really, I felt like, mentally to dedicate myself to a whole new series of books, a whole new world for 3+ books. They just sort of bog you down and take up time, and they sort of mentally take up space, especially if the series is unfinished. So this one is finished, I just haven't felt like I had the time to dedicate myself to get to this particular world, because this is definitely one I wanted to get to as soon as I feel like I have the time to read series again. Next is, what is a book you have yet to get to because it is a sequel, and for that I'm going with A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabaa Tahir. It is an Ember in the Ashes novel. A Sky Beyond the Storm is the 4th and final installment in the Ember in the Ashes series, and I haven't read this yet because A, it's new, and B, it is the 4th and final book, and I have yet to read any of the series, so I do have to read those other books before I can get to this one. Next question is, what is a book you have yet to read because it is brand new? And while I could have used the last book to fill this prompt as well, I wanted to challenge myself, and the absolute newest book to my collection is How the King of Elfham Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This novella just came out. It is a companion to the Folk of the Air series that Holly Black wrote about fairies, and those are definitely on my TBR. I'm interested in them, but I really was piqued when Owl Crate announced that they were going to do a teal cover of an exclusive edition for this book, so I just really wanted to get my hands on it. It is the newest one to my collection. Next is, what is a book you have yet to read because you have read another book by this author and you didn't enjoy it? And for that, I'm to go with Well Played by Jen DeLuca. I read her first book, Well Met, and while I wouldn't say I didn't like it or didn't enjoy it, I just didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to. It is a contemporary set at a Renaissance fair, and for me that sounded like it was a slam dunk, but I just didn't like some of the execution. I didn't connect with some of the characters as much as I wanted to. In fact, I found some of them kind of annoying, so I've just held off on reading the sequel. I did borrow it from the library, that's why you see a barcode there. I just haven't read it yet because I didn't love the other one as much as I thought I would, so this one hasn't been high on my list. Next is, what is a book you haven't read yet because you just haven't been in the mood for it? And for that, my general answer is fantasies, but more specifically, Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. I have started this. I think I'm like a chapter or 2 in, but I have not been in the mood for these sort of deeply involved fantasies. I haven't quite been in the mood for urban fantasy, which generally is what the Shadowhunters stories are. This one a little bit less so because it's not set in sort of contemporary times. It's more of a classic fantasy, but I haven't been in the fantasy mood, so I just haven't picked it up recently. Next is what is a book you haven't picked up because it's humongous, and for that I'm going with The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. At just over 800 pages, this thing is a beast. It is a brick of a book, and because I haven't been in the mood for fantasies, I certainly haven't been in the mood to tackle one this huge. And even if I were in a fantasy reading mood, this size book is daunting because it does require a lot of time devoted to it to finish it, and often when you're reading to make content of any sort, you feel like you need to get through a lot of books rather than just one. So perhaps if I felt like I could get a few pieces of content out of this one book, I might be more apt to pick it up when I'm in the mood for fantasy, but this is probably not one I'm going to get to anytime soon. Next is talk about a book that was a cover buy, but turned out to have bad reviews, and for this one I'm going to go with Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. So immediately this gorgeous blue and pink and purple and black cover really drew me in, and then I looked at the premise a little bit, and it's about this exclusive, shady kind of boarding school that's produced some of the best minds, and this girl gets invited to go, and it gets kind of wild and crazy. I was kind of interested because it reminded me a lot of sort of Ellingham Academy and Truly Devious, but in a more adult novel setting. So I was intrigued to pick it up, but then I found out that people had some not so great things to say about it. It's got a 3.11 on Goodreads, which is a respectable rating. It's not, you know, tanking at like 1 star, but people did have some qualms with the writing style and the plot and all that. I'm not somebody who puts a lot of stake in other people's reviews because reading is totally a subjective experience, so I might still absolutely love this book, but it did cause me to hesitate when I heard so many people immediately being critical of a new novel. And last but not least, the final question is, what is the most intimidating book on your TBR list? And that, without a doubt, for me, has to be Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Now, I was meant to have started this book, and I technically have. You can see the bookmark right there. But I clearly didn't get very far. I was supposed to be reading it for book group, and I partly dropped off because the pandemic threw a wrench in being able to meet and talk about it in person, but that was kind of an excuse because I just hadn't gotten into it yet. I was not loving the beginning. The beginning is a lot of the sort of style of writing that I didn't like. The parts of like Great Expectations that turned me off, where it's just tons and tons and tons of description and detail and things happening that don't really seem important to the actual story. They're just the mundane, everyday things being described in excessive detail, and that was sort of what was happening at the beginning. I have been assured by 2 of my book club buds that it is definitely worth the read and that perhaps I should watch the movie first to get that sort of beautiful romantic sense of the story sort of solidified in my being so that I want to pick up and finish the novel. But I'm also not somebody who's huge into Russian literature. It's never been the type of story that appeals to me, so this is definitely the most intimidating thing on my TBR right now. But that is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by leaving a like down below. And if you want to keep up with me and all of my bookish adventures, you can go ahead and click the subscribe button. And I highly recommend that you ring the little bell so that you don't miss a beat more of Vlogmas, because we are really down to the count now. We're in the single digits. You're running out of time to enjoy this content. I'm just kidding. It's going to live on YouTube for a very, very long time. But I'm going to go. I'll see you guys tomorrow with a new one. Bye!